So the moving from the group home to your thing is it reduces the costs for the government.
It does, yeah.
So they should be saying, hey, how can we help you scale up?
And yeah, there's certainly...
Let me guess, they're not.
Actually, Nick, I've got to surprise you on this one. They are.
They are, good. Okay, excellent. Excellent.
They are. However, what people want to scale up, here's the however, what they want to scale up is capacity that I can take on. However, if we want to scale up this concept, it requires us to culturally wrestle with how care looks for all the children in the system. And the way to scale this idea isn't more places like us, because you'll end up, you'll be chasing your tail. And I don't think what we need to be doing is using the same concepts behind it earlier. But in terms of the very pointy end of the system, we're so desperate for an option that's good for the child that, I think if I turned around and said I have 100 places tomorrow, I would be surprised if government wouldn't say, Jarrod, would love you to take 100 children into care.
Okay, so it sounds to me you've now found a point at which... you probably, I would imagine you have to increase your costs somewhat because you've got to attract a lot more carers. I'm not for a minute suggesting this is the best outcome, but it's a better outcome than what we've got at the moment, and it saves some money. So take us through why aren't you scaling up more than you are?
It's a question of how well would you need to get to know someone to let them care for your niece or nephew?
Oh, well, if to let them care for my niece or nephew, and I knew at the moment that my niece or nephew is sitting in a institution, the answer is I was going to trust you.
Yeah, that's and that for me to get that trust with them, that takes time. So
hang on, with them meaning the kids,
the potential carer.
Yeah, okay. So it's a human. So the limitation, and that's why I think the word scaling is a most unfortunate one, because it's a Silicon Valley term, and it's to do with turning a server.
That's right.
It's to do with going and buying some AWS, Amazon warehouse services. You start off with something that looked like Facebook in 2004, and you pay a whole lot of money, and then it looks like Facebook in 2010 with 1 billion users or whatever. So we're clearly not going to do that. You're saying that if you scale up, if you expand, if you grow, it's slow, hard work, and you're a bottleneck anyway. Because that's personal.
Right. You would need other groups like our group also trying to scale up at the same time.
Exactly.
But to go to a small organization like mine, even if there's the demand on our services, and I could meet it, as in I could go out and I could run job ads, and I'd find a lot of people that would put their hands up to do this. But our threshold is, of course, a lot higher, which is not just do they pass the working with children's check and designated agency check, but we want to say who's got to know these people well enough that they can disappoint each other and still want to work together in what's effectively co-parenting. So there's a lot of time investment, and I would rather have a really high quality product at a smaller scale than I would sacrifice that.
Yeah. It all makes sense.
Going back to that context, I guess, of bringing it out from Germany, I'd seen it work there, but that's a really different cultural context. And you asked that question of what happens, how does a child in Australia get from, say, a group home to my organisation? So we might have got to know someone over a year, but we're finally at the point where we say, we're going to find a child that we can do an individual matching. And you can imagine it's really different if I've got an adolescent family counsellor saying to me, Jarrod, find me a kid in the system where we can also identify that they have someone in their birth family that we could restore this child to. And I'll work with the child and with the family, because that's my skill set, and see if we can broker a restoration.
And is the birth family the nuclear family, or is it maybe their uncle or cousin, or what is it?
It might be mum, it might be dad, it might be, the grandparents, but is there someone within that family that we should also be, wherever possible, walking alongside and seeing if they can, even if they can't be the full-time carer, can they play a legitimate and safe caring role? But that might be one matching process, looks very different to a social worker I've got up on the coast who says, Jarrod, find me, the angry young men in the group homes that are, punching out the workers. And, I go surfing every day, and they'll come, they're staying in my home for 2 years, then in the granny flat for 2 years, and then their own apartment. That's not a restoration project. That's, a home-based placement. So each one of the matching we do, once we've got the professional who's been authorized as a carer, we then look at what would be a good child that would be a good match. And most importantly, we leave it up to the agency of the child and the carer to choose each other. So we might say, we think this is a good match, but then we organize a series for them to get to know each other. Sometimes that's a weekend and both say, I would love to do this. We had one young person who was living in Western Sydney, and I had a setting for them in Byron Bay, and they didn't want to leave Western Sydney, but they really liked the carers. And so we flew them up there every weekend for 6 months, and we just kept saying to everyone, you just got to hold, you just got to wait, the kid's got to choose it. And sure enough, after 6 months, one time he came to the carers and said, you know what, if we're going back in the school holidays and visiting my friends, I don't need to go back there anymore.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
it starts from a point of agency of we have to choose the relationship.